For the past 2 years of TEDxJacksonHole history, I had the honor of being your MC. Just as Mel and Anna are the MCs tonight. I stood on this very spot, and I introduced a number of speakers from around the world that spoke of resilience and passion, of personal struggles and overcoming obstacles, inspiring others and elevating the minds of the community. MCing is an honor I hold in the highest regard, and I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity to do it twice. But this year, I knew I had to do something different. This year, I decided to volunteer myself as a speaker. This year, I finally had the courage to speak up and say, I would prefer not to introduce anyone this year. I would like to be introduced. That level of courage did not exist within me until very recently. Although I'm an actor, having performed on this very stage in front of an audience more times than I can count, I still get nervous. I still experience that level of stage fright. Not when I'm playing a character with some memorized lines, that's easy. The stage fright comes in when I must portray the most difficult role of all, myself. About 5 years ago, I was living in Chicago. I was pursuing a life of improv comedy. But it was during that time that I realized that I was experiencing my first, experience with depression. I didn't know where it came from or what caused it. Perhaps it was because I was a small-town kid with big city dreams that quickly turned into big city nightmares with each month that passed. In the 2 years that I spent in Chicago pursuing a life of laughter, I spent half of it drowned in sadness. I was uneasy and off balance. And on top of the external influence of city life, I was battling internal wars on more fronts than I could count. Self-esteem and confidence being my two most difficult conflicts. Looking back, I knew I wasn't alone in that struggle. But when depression hits you, and not just sadness, but relentless depression, relentless sadness, you feel like that arrow was aimed at you and only you, and it's impossible to pull out on your own. Or so I thought. My journey to recovery did not begin in a doctor's office. It began in Iceland. I was in Reykjavik, September 12th, 2012. I had just arrived from Chicago with an overpacked backpack and zero plans whatsoever. It was dawn, but the sun had not yet risen. So I grabbed my coat, took my camera, I went out to the sea, and I waited for the sun to rise. The sky was cloudy, but the sun broke through, and I had never seen the sun like that before. The orange light blasted over me, and before I knew it, the sky exploded in beauty, exposing colors that I had never seen anywhere else in the world. This strange country, this place that I knew so little about, suddenly opened itself up to me and embraced me like I belonged there. It was in those moments that I first heard the first few notes of an epic symphony of Iceland. I did not realize that it would be a place I would be returning to 5 times in the next 5 years. That morning, that simple sunrise, I realized that everything that was holding me back from happiness, everything that I experienced in Chicago disappeared in an instant. There was no fear anymore, no doubt. Standing by the sea, I was happy with the person I was and was excited to show him off to whoever I came in my path. I ended up jumping on a whale watching boat randomly and spotted my first whale that day. Everything was impulsive. I rented a car and I drove north, meeting a man named Vidar Björnsson, who I consider to be my Icelandic dad. A man who embraced me like a son. A man who told me, burn your return ticket. You belong here. It was an adventure that has defined everything I am today, everything that has led me to this very spot. And when I went back to Chicago, I ended up quitting my job. I moved back to Jackson, and I promised myself that I would return. And so in 2013, I watched the midnight sun dance across the horizon from Vidar's front porch. I joined a game of swamp soccer in the West Fjords. and played with a team of strangers that embraced me as if had been their friend for ages. And in 2014, I worked with Vidar on a whale-watching ship in the north part of Iceland for an entire summer. I remember how happy I was standing at the top of that ship with binoculars to my eyes, seeking out the largest mammals in the world, and being actually kind of good at it. Every day offered a new adventure, a new challenge to overcome, a new whale to spot, a new batch of tourists to entertain. Being on the ocean was like medicine to me. And when the season ended and I had to go back home, I felt this voice inside me telling me, no, stay. What are you doing? You're finally happy here. I initially went to Iceland on a whim. A coworker of mine had gone to Iceland the year before my first trip. And on that first trip, I thought I was just going somewhere cool and rural. I had no idea that Iceland would showcase a version of myself that I had never seen anywhere else in the world, especially not in the States. And so I kept going back. I kept going back to visit him, to battle back my depression with doses of Iceland. Those of you who have experienced bouts of depression understand that depression is not something that you can expect to have. It can wash over you in an instant. One thing after another can impact the way you feel, the way you think, and crippling everything that you think makes you happy. I hated who I was when I wasn't in Iceland. And when I was back in the States, all I could think about was trying to get back. So I listened to Icelandic music constantly. I worked on the language. I Skyped with my friends. I browsed through all of my photos, desperately trying to transport myself out of the Wyoming Andrew Munz that I was and get back to the Icelandic Andrew Munz that I'd come to love. And so I decided to do something totally crazy. I decided that I would move to Iceland, this time for good. My family and friends, my coworkers, everybody thought that I was insane. They thought that I was flippant and indecisive. It was like they thought I didn't know what I wanted to achieve out of life, and I was putting everything on pause by going to this place. To everybody else, moving to Iceland was irresponsible. To me, it was therapy. I knew that moving to Iceland full-time in some way would completely heal me. It would buck my depression. I would be cured. And so in November of 2015, I found a job working as a chef and a baker in a very small town called Neskaupstaður in the eastern fjords, 9 hours from the capital. When I had arrived, the snows started to fall as if winter was waiting for me. And soon the sun began to disappear. The days grew shorter, the nights grew longer. And even though the town had about 1,500 people, you barely saw anybody around. And in that darkness, my symphony went quiet. In that silence, I was left with only myself, the very Andrew Munz that I thought I had escaped. Realizing that he had stowed away in my luggage, uninvited and unwelcome, threw me completely off balance. This move was supposed to cure me entirely, and I felt like this adventurous lacquer that I'd coated myself in was beginning to wash off, exposing everything I tried to cover up, exposing my doubts, my fears, my anger, my insecurities, and above all, my sadness. And once I accepted the truth behind that sadness, all I could feel was failure. I wasn't going to be fixed here. If I couldn't be happy in the place that made me happiest, there was no hope for me, was there? I retreated to the darkest parts of my mind. Suicide and self-inflicted harm began to infest me. And I couldn't go back to Wyoming at that point. Not again. Not after I declared Iceland as my salvation. I had somehow accepted this delusion that I had sabotaged myself by moving to this fjord in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of winter. And all I could think was that I made this massive mistake. I made a mistake. And this desire to punish myself for that mistake rose up from within me. A different sort of symphony began to play. One night in February, after overthinking my choices, I decided to put an end to my sadness once and for all. Come morning, the footprints that I would leave behind in the snow would end at the edge of the dock, and everyone would know where I had went and what became of me. That night, I breathed in the frigid air. I closed my eyes. I could feel my tears freezing to my face. I could feel my heart beating inside my chest, trying to tell me that this was a bad idea, but it wasn't. It made sense. And as I was standing at the edge, I could feel my body swaying back and forth. I'm not sure whether to jump in or just go back. And so I took a deep breath, my last breath, and I froze. Not out of fear. I had overcome fear by that point. I stopped myself because I realized I had reached the end. I had come to my own conclusion. I felt like I'd skipped to the end of a novel without giving the rest of the chapters a chance. Whatever legacy I thought I was leaving behind was absent. All I was leaving behind were footprints in the snow. So I stepped away from the dock, frustrated with myself. I'm not finished yet, I whispered. I'm not ready yet. I still had so much I wanted to do. I had books to publish, plays to write, audiences to entertain, people to love, sunrises to watch, whales to find. And all of that meant I couldn't stay in the fjord. And so I worked for a few more months, determined to stay sane and alive. And so in May, I came back to Jackson Hole not because I'd failed. I came home because I won. And so I went to a psychiatrist who diagnosed me with depression and prescribed me an antidepressant. I took the pills for 2 days, and then I dumped the rest of the pills down the toilet because I decided that I didn't want to be defined by a medication. And knowing that, I knew I would have to fight 10 times harder to heal myself on my own and find that happiness. It was the only way I could live with myself. I would have to heal Andrew Munz entirely, every version of him. I had to push back these feelings of depression because I could not hold on to a single hope of an expectation that was supposed to be fulfilled, because it makes us lose sight of who we are. And sometimes who we are is a complex mosaic of a bunch of broken pieces of our failed expectations and lofty ambitions cobbled together by the glue of what makes our hearts beat. And for me, Iceland was that glue. I traveled 48,471 miles in the past 5 years to figure out who I was and to get to this point on this stage. 48,471 miles to learn that there was no Icelandic version of Andrew Munz. There was no Wyoming me. It was always just me. I am the best version of myself that there will ever be. And knowing that, I knew I would have to fight that much harder to see everything that I wanted to achieve in life happen. I needed to live to see every ambition through to completion and make sure that the next project that I did was that much greater than the one that happened. I needed me to be around, to smile and laugh and be here. I'm happy to say that my journey to my legacy is not over. It's just beginning. And I'm so thankful for the number of people in my life who have been behind me during that process, many of whom are in the audience right now. Their applause over the years has helped me be who I am today. It helped me be here, breathing air, standing in front of you, not as the funny man actor, but as someone who's alive, someone who, after so many years of self-doubt, has finally been introduced. Thank you.